Lena's hands shook as she approached the table. Another late-night shift, another struggle to stay awake. But as she looked up, her heart stopped. Sitting there, smiling warmly, was Taylor Swift. Little did Lena know, this chance encounter was about to turn her world upside down. As Taylor slipped her a note at the end of the meal, Lena had no idea she was about to read words that would change her life forever. Before we continue this amazing story, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. The restaurant's front door swung open. A hush fell over the dining room. A familiar silhouette stood in the doorway, backlit by the setting sun. It was Taylor Swift, her casual sundress and oversized sunglasses, a stark contrast to the palpable excitement that rippled through the room. Whispers erupted, phones appeared, and the staff's professionalism wavered as they stole glances at the pop icon. Lena's manager approached, his voice trembling. "Lena, you're up. Table 7. And for the love of God, don't mess this up." Lena's heart pounded like a drumbeat in her chest as she made her way to Taylor's table. This was Taylor Swift, whose music had been the soundtrack to countless late-night shifts. Duty warred with wonder as Lena approached. Taylor looked up, her smile warm and inviting. "Hi there," she said, her voice gentle. Lena was struck by Taylor's approachability, her presence both larger than life and completely down to earth. "Good evening, Miss Swift," Lena managed. "Welcome to our restaurant. Can I start you off with something to drink?" "Just Taylor, please. And I'd love a glass of iced tea if you have it." As the evening progressed, Lena found herself drawn into easy conversation with Taylor. Between orders, she'd returned to find Taylor eager to chat about everything from local coffee shops to life in the spotlight. "It must be hard," Lena said, refilling Taylor's glass. "Always being watched, I mean." Taylor nodded, a hint of weariness in her eyes. "It can be. But nights like this, just having a normal conversation, they remind me why I love what I do." Lena's initial nervousness melted away. She shared more than she intended, mentioning her son's upcoming school trip and her hopes for his future. Taylor listened intently, her eyes widening with interest at every detail. When a nearby table knocked over a glass, Lena sprang into action, cleaning up the mess while reassuring the embarrassed customers. Taylor watched, clearly impressed by Lena's grace under pressure. As the evening drew to a close, Taylor asked for the check. She glanced around the now quiet restaurant, her gaze settling on Lena with an intensity that made the waitress's breath catch. Taylor pulled out a pen and began writing on a napkin. Lena watched, curiosity battling with politeness. Taylor folded the napkin carefully and tucked it beneath her credit card. As Lena processed the payment, her mind raced with possibilities. What could Taylor have written? Taylor stood, gathering her things. "Thank you for everything tonight, Lena. You've reminded me of something important." Before Lena could respond, Taylor pressed the folded napkin into her hand. Their eyes met for a moment, and Lena felt a jolt of electricity pass between them. Then, with a final smile and a wave to the starstruck staff, Taylor Swift was gone, leaving behind a whirlwind of excitement and a single folded napkin that suddenly felt heavy with possibility. With trembling fingers, Lena unfolded the napkin. The words scrawled across it made her heart skip a beat. Could a simple piece of paper really change the course of her life? She blinked, trying to focus on the neat handwriting that covered the delicate surface. The message didn't make sense at first. Lena's brow furrowed as she read, her eyes widening with each passing line. Taylor's words painted a picture of their brief connection, acknowledging Lena's challenges and the strength she showed in the face of adversity. "Your warmth and genuine spirit touched me more than you know," the note began. Lena's vision blurred as tears welled up, but it was the next part that made her knees weak. "I want to help you achieve your dreams. I've arranged for a full scholarship for your son's education, from elementary school through college." Lena gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. A chill ran down her spine, followed by a sudden warmth that spread through her chest. Taylor had set up a fund to cover Lena's living expenses for the next 2 years, allowing her to pursue her own education or start a business. There were even mentions of job opportunities aligned with Lena's passions and skills. As the full impact of Taylor's offer sank in, Lena's legs gave way. She sank to the floor, her back against the cool tile of the restaurant's back hallway. The napkin fluttered in her hands as she sobbed, overwhelmed by the unexpected kindness of a stranger who had truly seen her in the space of a single evening. The weight of unpaid bills, the constant worry about her son's future, the bone-deep exhaustion from working double shifts, all of it seemed to lift from her shoulders. For the first time in years, Lena felt a glimmer of hope, a chance to break free from the cycle of poverty that had held her in its grip for so long. As her tears subsided, Lena's mind began to race with possibilities. She could finish her degree, maybe even start the small catering business she'd always dreamed of. Her son could go on school trips without her having to choose between his experiences and keeping the lights on. But as quickly as the excitement rose, doubt crept in. Was this real? Could she really trust that a globally famous pop star would follow through on such an extravagant promise? She refolded the napkin carefully, smoothing out the creases with shaking hands. Rising to her feet, Lena tucked it safely into her apron pocket. The restaurant around her continued its usual bustle, oblivious to the life-altering moment that had just occurred in the back hallway. But everything had changed. Whether Taylor's offer was genuine or not, Lena had been given something precious: hope. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future beyond the next shift, the next bill, the next day. The sleek office felt like another world. Lena sat perched on the edge of a plush leather chair, her worn waitress uniform a stark contrast to the polished mahogany desk before her. The crumpled napkin in her hand felt like a lifeline, connecting her to the surreal events of the past few days. Just hours ago, she had been pouring coffee and clearing tables. Now she found herself in a place that seemed to belong to a different reality altogether. Across from her sat a team of professionals, their crisp suits and confident smiles a world away from the bustling diner where she'd spent countless hours. They introduced themselves as Taylor Swift's representatives, their presence reinforcing the legitimacy of the offer. As they began to discuss the details, Lena felt a wave of doubt wash over her. Was this real? Could she really trust these strangers with her future? "Ms. Johnson?" the woman directly across from her began, her voice gentle but firm. "We understand this is a lot to take in. Let's start with the basics of what Ms. Swift is proposing." Lena nodded, her throat too tight to speak. The team outlined the offer: a full scholarship for her son's education, a housing fund to cover rent for 2 years, and career support to help Lena pursue her dreams. As they spoke, images flashed through Lena's mind: a kitchen with a working stove, a bedroom where her son could study without the constant hum of traffic outside, her small catering business no longer a distant fantasy. Excitement and fear mingled in Lena's chest. This was everything she'd ever dreamed of, but it also meant leaving behind the life she knew. Could she really step into this new world? She thought of her son, his bright eyes full of hope even on the toughest days. She imagined him walking into a classroom without holes in his shoes, without the weight of their struggles on his small shoulders. But with opportunity came new challenges. Lena realized she'd need to learn quickly about finances, about navigating a world so different from her own. She'd have to face the judgments of those who might not understand her sudden change in fortune. The room fell silent as the team finished their presentation. All eyes turned to Lena, waiting for her response. She felt like a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis, fragile yet full of potential. "Ms. Johnson," the lead advisor said softly, "we know this is a big decision. Take all the time you need to think it over." Lena looked down at the napkin in her hand, Taylor's words of encouragement still visible despite the creases. She thought of all the nights she'd stayed up worrying about bills, all the times she'd had to say no to her son's simple requests. With a deep breath, Lena lifted her head. Her voice shook slightly, but her words were clear. "I accept. I don't know how I can ever thank Ms. Swift enough. but I promise to make the most of this opportunity." The tension in the room broke, replaced by warm smiles and congratulations. As the team began to discuss next steps, Lena felt a sense of lightness she hadn't experienced in years. The challenges ahead were daunting, but for the first time in a long time, the future held more promise than fear. Lena stood in front of her bathroom mirror, her reflection a stark contrast to the woman she'd been just a year ago. Gone were the dark circles under her eyes and the constant worry lines etched into her forehead. Instead, she saw a woman with a spark of confidence in her gaze and a subtle smile playing at the corners of her mouth. As she walked through her new apartment, memories of her old life flashed before her eyes. The cramped, run-down place she and her son once called home faded away, replaced by sunlit rooms and comfortable furniture. In the kitchen, the hum of a well-stocked refrigerator replaced the hollow echo of empty cabinets. Lena gently woke her son for school, smiling at his new backpack, a far cry from the duct-taped relic he'd once carried. His desk, covered in books and papers, told the story of his newfound passion for learning. He was thriving in his new school, excelling in ways she'd only dreamed of before. Yet doubt sometimes crept into Lena's mind. The transition from struggling waitress to comfortable single mother pursuing her dreams felt surreal at times. She juggled her studies at the local community college with her responsibilities as a mother, her mind buzzing with ideas for the catering company she hoped to start one day. A chance encounter with Jess, her former coworker, highlighted how far she'd come. Jess's eyes widened as she took in Lena's appearance. Gone was the frayed uniform, replaced by an air of confidence. "Lena? Is that really you?" Jess exclaimed. "You look different, happy." As they chatted, Lena realized that while her circumstances had changed dramatically, her core values remained the same. She still felt a deep connection to her roots and a desire to help others who were struggling as she once had. This realization sparked something in Lena. She started a small support group for single mothers in her community, sharing her story and offering a listening ear. It was her way of paying forward the kindness that had transformed her life. One evening, after an emotional support group meeting, Lena reread the note Taylor had given her that fateful night. The words, "once a lifeline," now served as a reminder of her journey and the responsibility she carried. Her phone buzzed with a text from Taylor's team, inviting her to a small private event. The night arrived, and as Taylor took the stage, their eyes met. After the performance, they embraced warmly. "It's so good to see you," Taylor said. "You look amazing. How have you been?" As they talked, Lena realized the dynamic between them had shifted. She was no longer the awestruck waitress, but a woman coming into her own, with dreams and achievements to share. Their conversation flowed easily, touching on Lena's studies, her son's progress, and her volunteer work. Lena's story sparked a cascade of kindness across the country. Communities embraced the power of small acts, with coffee shops seeing more pay-it-forward chains and businesses sponsoring education funds. Lena's support group for single mothers flourished, offering both emotional support and practical advice. Her catering business became a training ground for women entering the workforce. Standing before students at her son's school, Lena felt the weight of her journey. "Remember," she said, her voice steady, "every act of kindness has the power to change a life. Let's create a world where no one has to face their battles alone."